Hello, welcome back to the fourth segment of Opera Insight 2024, Richard Strauss's Der Rosenkavalier. I'm your presenter, Don Feinberg, and our theme for this festival season, it was inspired by the elixir of love, because we are looking for our own recipe for love with the ingredients culled from each of the 5 operas. Let's see what this opera can add to our recipe. Now, instead of the 1790s, the opera is set costume-wise in the 1950s. And no doubt you'll notice the big pink dresses reminiscent of musicals like Grease, where Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta could sing and dance their way into our hearts. Well, I don't know much about dancing, but I do know there is going to be great singing, and this opera will blow your socks off, or should I say, Bobby socks off. And while we are nostalgically traipsing down memory lane, do you remember when Three Musketeers candy bars were so big you could divide them into 3 big parts to share with 2 friends? All for one, and more importantly, 1 candy bar for all? Well, sadly, those days are gone for candy bars, which have really shrunk in size. But happily, not so with opera. Case in point, Der Rosenkavalier. This opera also comes in 3 parts, and after you experience it, I'm sure you're going to find ample amounts to share with your friends. As its director, Bruno Rovella, explained, this opera really is like a triple bill. There's, of course, beautiful singing and upbeat Strauss waltzes that we generally think of as operatic, but there's also a quality of a play, a narrative drama with humorous repartee between the characters. And finally, there's the highest level of operatic laugh-out-loud comedy that builds throughout the performance. Act 1 is a bit reserved, and by the 3rd act, the comedy devolves from high comedy to comedy bordering on the body, all in service to a great night at the opera. The climax of the opera concludes with a soprano trio that is one of the best moments in all of opera, topped off by a moving love duet. The ending of the 3-in-1 night at the opera is as exhilarating as it is satisfying. Oh, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's look at this opera in detail and take special note of the serious lessons it offers about love. And these we can add to the ingredients for our recipe. The overture sets the romantic mood with moments of underlying intensity that imply strong eroticism. And sure enough, when the opera opens its first scene, we find the Marschallin, a princess, with her young lover, Octavian. 2 things. First, he is a mezzo-soprano in a pants role, that is to say, a male role being sung by a woman. And second, he has a nickname, Quin Quin, which, after my researches, I discovered, translated from the German, means Quin Quin. It's just a silly name, same in every language. Well, they are interrupted. Octavian then jumps out of bed and disguises himself as the Marschallin's maid, Mariandel. Now, don't be confused, just because it's merely a woman playing a man disguising himself quite convincingly as a woman, which in fact he is. Okay, not confused? Good, back to the story. The interrupter turns out to be Baron Och. He's an old, crude lecher who brags about his sexual exploits and makes a pass at the maid. The Baron, whose lechery knows no bounds, is now after the Marschallin herself. His crude presentation contrasts with the loving relationship he's interrupting. All this, even though he's engaged to be married. In fact, that's the reason for his visit. He wants a nobleman to deliver the traditional silver rose to his fiancée, Sophie, the sweet, innocent daughter of a very rich merchant. The Marschallin suggests Octavian, and after much humorous preparation, the arrangements are set, and Act 1 ends with Octavian's departure. When he arrives with the rose, much comic pomp and circumstance is quickly replaced by the meeting with Sophie herself, and the fastest falling in love ever. This makes speed dating seem positively sluggish. She then decides I'm going to refuse to marry the Baron. Octavian defends her decision. He and the Baron fight a duel. The Baron is injured, but undeterred in his oafish way, and in any case, he intends to marry the rich Sophie. Despite his injury, more to his pride than his body, he is cheered up. How can this come about? Well, it's by a supposed assignation with the Marschallin. And as you probably guessed, because it's an opera, it's all a ruse, a part of the plan to expose his lechery. Act 3 includes ample doses of comedic chaos, but no spoiler alert, because you won't hear anything from me to spoil your fun. It is just filled with disguises and surprises, and when the smoke all clears, the Baron is out and Sophie is free. Yet, Octavian feels conflicted, torn between his passion for his mistress, but his newly found true love, Sophie. The Marschallin saves the day. She encourages the path of true love, as expressed in her incomparable trio with Sophie and Octavian, leaving their relieved lovers to sing their own triumphant duet. Now, beneath the comedy lie several important lessons about love. First and foremost, the opera contrasts the crass world of the Baron's lechery with the joining of two hearts in the love between Octavian and Sophie. Together, they overcome prior expectations and they forge their own way in the world. A part of their journey includes the way that Octavian, from the upper class, overcomes barriers posed by the fact that Sophie comes from the bourgeoisie. He is ready to leave his mistress, the Marschallin, despite their class similarities, in the name of true love. Second, the Marschallin herself has facilitated his journey by her encouragement and approval. She sacrifices her own happiness for that of her lover. And we are no stranger to the sacrificial aspect of love, as we experienced earlier this year in La Traviata. Third, and perhaps most poignant, is the Marschallin's realization of her aging and the constraints this put on her finding true love. Her hopes must live side by side with her acceptance. She knows how important it is to cherish love you have while you are lucky enough to have it. Bruno Ravella, the opera's director, remarked that this opera is truly a masterpiece, and he added, "When it comes around, you just cannot miss it." Without question, it is a great evening of entertainment with a poignant reminder to enjoy every moment of love that we have in our lives, a key ingredient for this season's recipe for our elixir of love. This brings us to our fifth and final segment of Opera Insight 2024. And wouldn't you know it? What better way to search for ingredients for a recipe for love than to seek it out in the opera that inspired our search, Donizetti's Les Airs d'Amour. See you then.